2000, Colonel John J. Wright and Command Sergeant Major Chuck Thompson prepared the entire peninsula for the year 2000 bug, also known as the Y2K.
When the clock rolled over midnight, my wife and I went and stood outside. We had a drop to drink, knocks, tops one man, people were on standby. None of the lights failed. I went back inside about 5 after, picked up my phone, I still had dial tone. I called the TNOC and everything's still green, everything was still green. And I had talked to him earlier in the day and they were able to look at the DISN, the DISA stuff. And so we knew from CONUS and the Eastern Pacific that nothing had failed, and so we were pretty optimistic. I had been in command about a month, so it would have been July. We were doing a pre-UFL exercise. And on top of Tango, we had the 304th had a site set up, and it had been raining a lot. They got more rain in that period in July than it was like the 100-year flood, if you will. And so it was, I think, at 4 o'clock in the morning when I got a phone call from the battalion commander that said there had been a mudslide at Mungyangdae. They had 2 people that were unaccounted for. They were bringing some of them back to the hospital. They had taken folks that were at other places on the site, on the mountain, and trying to find weapons and 2 people. So I went over to the hospital, met some of the soldiers. Some of them were in pretty bad shape. We found a staff sergeant who's from the dining facility earlier in the morning who had been killed as the mud. It was incredible what it did to the site. I went out to the site after I saw everybody at the hospital, and I went out later on in the morning. So while I was out there, the USFK commander was out there, the 8th Army commander was out there, Sergeant Major and I were out there. And I remember we were still missing the second soldier. We couldn't find the second soldier. And I remember Sergeant Major looking over at me and saying, this is the worst day of your command, and he was right. I can't imagine what it's like, having known what I went through losing those 2 soldiers that day. I can't imagine what it's like for our units today in Iraq and Afghanistan when they lose the numbers of soldiers they lose. I can't imagine the toll it must take on leadership.
Between June 2000 to June 2002, Colonel Perry Bridges, along with the Command Sergeant Major Larry Thomas, activated the 14th Signal Detachment, Theater Strategic, to provide theater-level direct support, general support, ComSec logistics, and maintenance support to U.S. Army forces. Between June 2002 to June 2004, Colonel Ronald Bouchard and Command Sergeant Major Alejo Kinata shifted focus to the Tactical Signal Battalions. Fielding of the Single Shelter Switch AN-TTC 56, the Integrated Systems Control AN-TYQ 76 Bravo, and the Tactical Message System AN-TYC 24.
Let me give credit where credit is due. The previous commander to me was Brigadier General Ron Bouchard, who is currently the Forces Command G6. Ron did a fantastic job of moving the Korean Peninsula, the theater, and the brigade into the 21st century. Modernized the equipment and the C4 suites and VTC equipment into the 21st century at all the CPs that you know about today, Oscar, CP Tango, and a lot of other places along the peninsula. So Ron gets credit for that.
In 2002, again, I was had the great fortune of being able to go back and be the brigade commander. After being there for 2 times prior, it definitely felt like I was back home. Shortly after I got there, I decided that I needed to develop a vision and try to push ahead. I talked to all of my smart people, and we had a number of projects on the books to try to overcome some of the capabilities or some of the gaps that we had. One of which, at that particular time, the backbone fiber cable was a 45 megabit backbone fiber. For the most part, it was a single run of fiber, and so as they were building more roads, there was a number of occasions where, of course, the fiber optic cable was cut by the bulldozers and whatnot. In developing a plan, I decided that I needed to focus on 4 areas, one of which was bandwidth, and I will attribute this to Major General Kavanaugh. Major General Kavanaugh, of course, was the brigade commander when I was the battalion commander down in the 307 Signal Battalion. And he had once told me, he said, "Remember, Ron, the answer always is more bandwidth. What do people need? More bandwidth." And so as I took a look at what were some of the gaps, it very quickly came to mind that we needed to have increased bandwidth. We increased bandwidth by 2 projects that we had. One was the fiber optic in developing the sonnet rings, and the other one was to put in the microwave towers and radio systems throughout the peninsula. The microwave systems in and of itself, although they were going to be the backup system, would provide 150 megabits worth of bandwidth. Again, you have to remember that the fiber optic cable was only providing 45 megs. 150 was more than 3 times. When we talked about the fiber project that we started up, and we started replacing all of the old fiber, and we bought sonnet boxes, we were able to put in a 10 gigabit system that was expandable to 1 terabyte and beyond. So the bandwidth capability on Peninsula drastically improved. Second area that we focused on was, of course, command post modernizations. Many of the command posts, as we went on through, were still using grease pencils and maps. And again, you have to remember that we're 2002 to 2004. We're definitely into the automation age. So when you're walking into a major command post that's trying to fight a war and they're on our grease pencils, we had to move and try to be able to use some of the automated tools. I had talked to my boss, and we all agreed that we needed to increase functionality throughout all of the command posts, because increasing functionality at one command post without doing so at the others would mean that you only have the capability of, in essence, using those functions at your command post and not being able to share that information with everybody else. So during that 2-year period of time, we had a number of modernization projects that would upgrade and automate all of these command posts throughout the peninsula.
Under the leadership of Colonel LeWarn